Imagine two men with the same title, King of the Jews. One sits on a literal throne in Jerusalem, surrounded by architectural splendor and a private army, yet he is paralyzed by paranoia. The other is a toddler in a modest home in a tiny town, possessing no political power, no wealth, and no army. Today, we're looking at a moment in time 2,000 years ago when pagan outsiders traveled thousands of miles to declare that the child, not the tyrant, was the true king worthy of worship. Who is this king? His name is Jesus. We're going to see how Jesus' kingship doesn't just demand our attention, it demands a choice. Let's begin in the days of Herod the Great. Herod was Rome's man in Judea, a political appointee who was ruthless enough to murder members of his own family to keep his power. When a caravan of wise men from the east arrives in Jerusalem asking for the newborn king of the Jews, Herod isn't just curious, he's deeply disturbed. The term wise men or magi likely refers to scholars from Persia or Babylon. These regions were historically foreign to Israel's God. The Gentile outsiders were well versed in astronomy. While they were outsiders to the covenant of Israel, they discerned what the experts missed. A supernatural star was signaling a cosmic shift. The Greek word for disturbed used to describe Herod's response to the wise men's declaration of a new king implies an inner turmoil or dread. Herod understood the stakes. If a true king had been born by divine appointment, his own rule was illegitimate. So Herod calls in the religious A-team, the chief priest and scribes, and asks where this Messiah is supposed to be born. Without hesitation, they quote Micah 5:6, Bethlehem in the land of Judah. Here is the most unsettling part of the passage. The religious leaders had the right information, but they had no interest in the invitation. They could pinpoint the exact location of the Savior, yet they stayed home while the foreign seekers traveled the final few miles to find him. As adults, we have perhaps been in the church for years. We need to ask ourselves, has our biblical knowledge become mere information rather than a reason to run to the King? The wise men teach us that proximity to the truth doesn't matter if our hearts remain cold. Those who recognize Jesus for who he is cannot remain neutral. Well, the wise men continue to Bethlehem, and the star reappears, leading them to a house. Matthew 1:10 tells us they were overwhelmed with joy. Literally, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. When they see the child Jesus, they just don't offer a polite nod. They fall to their knees in profound worship to him. Then they open their treasures and present three specific gifts that reveal exactly who they think Jesus is. Gold, a gift fit for royalty, affirming his kingship. Frankincense, which is used in temple worship, affirming his divinity. And myrrh, an ointment used for burial, foreshadowing his suffering and death. Even at Jesus' birth, the shadow of the cross was present. These men of status and wealth weren't prestigious to bow before a child in a modest home because they recognized his glory. This divine encounter ends with a warning. God warns the Magi in a dream not to return to Herod. So they go home by a different route. This is the ultimate takeaway for us. When you truly encounter the King, you cannot walk the same path you did before. True worship reorients our allegiances and changes our direction. This week, I want to challenge you as an act of worship to identify one way you can give your time, talent, or treasure to the King of Kings. Don't be like the religious leaders who stayed at home with their head knowledge. Be like the seekers who followed the light until they found the true King. Thank you, and God bless you in the coming week.